Welcome and happy Easter to everybody. I want to share with you this morning a strange story, but one that to me means a lot. It's called The Rag Man. I saw a strange sight. I stumbled upon a story most strange, like nothing I had ever seen before in my life. My street sense, my sly tongue had never prepared me for this. Hush, child, hush now, and let me tell you this story. Even before the dawn one Friday morning, I noticed a young man. He was strong and handsome, and he was walking the alleyways of the city. And he was pulling an old cart filled with bright new clothes. And he was calling out in a clear and distinct tenor voice, "Rags!" The air was foul and the first light kind of filthy to be crossed by such sweet music. "Rags, new rags for old. I take your tired rags. Rags." Now this was a wonder, I thought to myself, for the man stood 6'4", and he was handsome. His arms were like tree limbs, and hard and muscular, and his eyes flashed intelligence. Could he find no better job than this, than to sell rags in the inner city? I followed him. My curiosity was getting piqued, and it drove me, and I wasn't disappointed. Now soon the rag man saw a woman sitting on her back porch. She was sobbing into a handkerchief. She was sighing and shedding 1,000 tears. Her knees and elbows made a sad X. Her shoulders, they shook. Her heart was breaking. Well, soon the rag man saw the woman there, and he stopped his cart, and quietly he walked to the woman, stepping around tin cans, dead toys, dirty Pampers, and made his way up to the back porch. He said, "Give me your rag, and I'll give you another." He slipped the handkerchief from her eyes. She looked up, and he laid across her palm a nice, clean linen cloth, so bright and shiny. And then she blinked from the gift to the giver and back again. Then as he began to pull his cart away, the ragman did a very strange thing. He put her stained handkerchief on her own face. And then he began to weep, to sob so grievously as she had done. His shoulders were just shaking, yet she was left without a single tear. This is a wonder, I thought to myself, and I followed the sobbing ragman like a child who cannot turn away from a mystery. "Rags, rags, new rags for old," he shouted. In a little while, when the sky showed gray behind the rooftops and I could see the shedded curtains hanging out black windows that were there, the ragman came upon a girl whose head was wrapped in the bandage. And there was a stream of blood coming down the side of her head. Now the tall ragman looked upon this child with pity and at her cheek and said, "Give me your rag," as he reached down, tracing his own line on the side of her face, "and I will give you mine." The child could only gaze at him while he loosened the bandage, removed it, and tied it to his own head. The bonnet that he had, this beautiful yellow bonnet, he set on her head. And it was so beautiful. And yet there was no blood. There were no stains anymore. But when he tied that bandage around his head, the wound opened up and the blood was even darker, and it was running faster than it was when it was on the little girl. It was his own blood. The child could only gaze at him. "Rags, rags, I take old rags," he cried, sobbing, bleeding, strong, intelligent ragman. The sun hurt both the sky now and my eyes, and the ragman seemed more and more to hurry as he went. "Are you going to work?" he asked a man who was leaning against the telephone pole. The man shook his head. And the ragman said, "Well, do you have a job?" And the man said, "Are you crazy?" And then he pulled away from the pole, revealing that he had no right arm. It was gone. His sleeve was flat and tucked into his pocket. "So," said the ragman, "give me your jacket, and I will give you mine." Such quiet authority in his voice. Well, the one-armed man took off his jacket, and so did the ragman. But I trembled at what I saw, for the ragman's arm stayed in his jacket. And as he went and put it on the old man that had no arm, all of a sudden he had two arms, strong and sturdy. He was solid. But as the ragman put on his coat, there was no arm. It was gone. "Go to work," the ragman said. And after that, the ragman found the drunk lying unconscious beneath an army blanket, an old man all hunched over and wheezed and sick. And the ragman took that blanket and wrapped it around himself. And for the drunk, he left new clothes. And now I had to run to keep up with the ragman, though he was weeping uncontrollably, bleeding freely from the forehead, pulling a cart with one arm, stumbling because of the drunkenness, falling down again and again, exhausted, old and sick. Yet he went with terrible speed. On spider's legs, he slithered through the alley of the city, this mile and the next, until he came to its limits, and then he rushed beyond those limits. I wept to see the change in the man. I hurt to see his sorrow. And yet I needed to see where he was going in such haste, perhaps to know what really was driving him. This little old ragman, he came to a landfill. He came to the garbage pits. And I saw him climb up, and I wanted to help him, but I hung back in hiding. And he climbed the hill, and with tormented labor, he cleared a little space up on that hill, and he sighed, and he lay down. And he pillowed his head with a handkerchief and with a jacket, and he covered his bones with an army blanket, and he died. Oh, how I cried to witness that death. I slumped into a junk car and wailed and mourned as one who has no hope, because I had come to love that ragman. Every other face had faded in the wonder of this man, and I cherished him, but he died. I sobbed myself to sleep. I did not know how could I know that I slept through Friday night, and then through Saturday and through Saturday night. But then on Sunday morning I was awakened by a violent light, pure, hard, demanding light, slammed against my sour face, and I blinked and I looked, and I saw the last and the first of all wonders. There was the ragman, folding the blanket carefully. There was a scar on his forehead, but he was alive. And besides that, he was healthy. There was no sign of sorrow, no sign of age, and all the rags that he had gathered shined for their cleanliness. Well, I lowered my head, and trembling for all that I had seen, I myself walked up to the ragman. I told him my name with shame, for I was a sorry figure next to him. Then I took off my clothes in that place, and I said to him with dear yearning in my voice, "Dress me." He dressed me. My Lord, he put new rags on me, and I am a wonder beside myself. The rag man, the Christ.